Hey son and welcome to Rauta's Norwegian Black Metal Review, one of the last albums of year 2024. Those who have made already their list for year 2024 as best of albums of the year by early December or even late November are gonna miss out some of the albums, including contenders such as this by Svarttjern. There are also a couple of other albums which I would say like Baldauro, Satanic Warmaster and what have. So my point here is don't get too hasty because sometimes December brings you some of the best gifts of the year. Now, before we take a look at this album here, let's take a quick look at the band's metal archive site for background. So, based in Norway, Oslo since 2003, made the first album in 2009 after a couple of demos, the proper way, if you ask me, and ever since 6 albums out. 6 albums and a little bit more than 20 years. Now, this is one of the few bands that I pretty much have reviewed and gone through all the albums ever since they were founded. And this is also one of the very few bands that I consider very consistent in quality and style. I've always liked all of the band's, music so far. However, there are no absolute peak moments. This is not a negative comment, obviously, because for me, this is much like, bands like, say, Marduk or Cannibal Corpse never fails you, but always delivers you quality. But sometimes it means there are no these exceptional peak points, because when you do good enough, maybe those peak points are not that obvious. Just a wild guess, though. Anyway, this latest album, 2024, is something that I guess some of us have been waiting for a while, because shame is just a word, a horrible name for an album. Already was something that I liked, apart from the name that is. And now 4 years later we have this Draw Blood. I was also happy to actually interview these guys not too long time ago at Steelfest, where the guys were performing with Carpathian Forest. So there is a link to this band, not only in terms of the name, which you might have seen on the main page, but because of the live members. So sometimes interesting things happen in Norwegian scene. But this is how it looks. 39 minutes of music, 10 tracks, including a wild Rolling Stones cover. So, I like it when metal bands, especially extreme metal bands, go outside extreme metal box and do the cover, rather than just, hey, we play black metal, so let's cover Venom or Bathory. What the hell? Go wild. And this is not the first time a black metal band is actually covering Rolling Stones, because as far as I can say, I remember that Marduk cover from, years and years ago when they did similar thing, just with different song. So kudos for that. Now let's take a look at this album. So comes with a kind of a black and white cover, even if a little bit wild colors in there. By wild I mean exceptional use of what you say, light brown maybe, or you can imagine it to be gold. Inside of this booklet you will also, of course, find lyrics and the band photo. Kind of a classic, corpse paint and stuff, and then some liner notes with the lineup and everything. Here is, of course, CD, pretty basic. And because I am a simple man, I also like simple things like names such as Draw Blood. You don't need complicated, sentences to make a point. Just get to it, and that's pretty much of it. So, that's about it. Norwegian black metal year 2024. What can we expect? Well, first of all, in my opinion, once again, this consistent quality the band is known for. You could say it's the kind of a middle of the road thing when it comes to this kind of black metal. It's not really raw, because, they ain't no Darkthrone, but it's nothing like symphonic, dissonant, progressive, avant-garde-ish, Viking, folk stuff. Just forget all of those extra adjectives which you might need to describe it. Call it Norwegian black metal checks pretty much all of the boxes that you need to know about this album. But obviously then you're like, but what about the different kind of bands? You have all those Enslaveds and Immortals and Darkthrones and Mayhems, the list goes on, and you're like, so what is this more closest to? And that's where it gets kind of a tricky, because at the same time I'm like, nothing of those bigger bands, but then again there are lots of smaller bands which this might remind of. Now, if we take a look at this, before my own opinion, similar artists, you will see bands like Ragnarok, 1349, Sjurder, Urgehall, Tolke, Goldbrand, Carpathian Forest, and so on. Yes, I don't agree with all these suggestions here, but yes, you can pretty much see I've ticked some of the boxes, upvoting them, because these are exactly the bands that kind of remind this of. maybe Ragnarok is in a way the closest one, but this particular album kind of ticks a lot of the same boxes than Carpathian Forest. Why? Because technically speaking, while this is pure Norwegian black metal and not making nothing new as such, it also has this kind of a rock and rollist feeling. Calling it a black and roll is too much of a stretch in my opinion, because this is still more or less the kind of a basic Norwegian or Nordic black metal in that sense. But it doesn't really sound like the Swedish style of the melodic style and all, nor doesn't really sound like Finnish style. A little more grim, but also sometimes very melodic. So there is nothing of those bands or countries, so then you go back to Norway and figure out. So all this doesn't really, sound like the so-called A-class of a lot of Norwegian bands. Certain names popping up, more or less. And I would say Carpathian Forest, 1349, maybe Ragnarok, if they were having a baby, a wild threesome of sorts, this could really come out. So it has this kind of let's do mid-tempo and a little bit up-tempo stuff, but add a little bit of rock and roll into a mix. And that's where this kind of a Ragnarok 1349 Carpathian Forest Ménage à Trois becomes a reality. It doesn't sound, however, a copycat thing, and that's obviously a blessing. Svarttjern sounds like it's standing its own feet. But surely there are these similarities, and they are of course very, very welcome, because if you like certain styles, you're gonna like the other ones. Then again, if you already know what Svarttjern is supposed to like, not exactly raw, not exactly symphonic and all. I'm not gonna repeat myself here too much, but just saying, then you know what to expect. And for me, this is a good album. Good production, good vocals, but then again, nothing exactly outstanding, nothing exactly phenomenal. Like I said, that is not a negative thing. Sometimes you just want your basic stuff. Like, for me, usually I go for the basic coffee. So for me, basic black metal is exactly a good thing when it's done right. The proper way, proper production, proper vocals, and all that stuff. And this is it. It's not the darkest, it's not the most evil or most vile or most satanic album out there, but it's doing exactly what you are supposed to have when you go for some more modern black metal band from Norway. So, in my opinion, definitely one of the contenders of albums of the year in 2024. Not likely to be in their top 5 for me anyway, but still a solid album that, in my opinion, earns its listeners, and it's totally worth listening to. Maybe even buying blindly. But of course, nobody should buy blindly anything these days. So give it a listen. It's been out since December 6th, so a couple of weeks already. So give it a go, and if you like it, buy it. And if you get the chance to see these guys live, go see them. Nice guys playing good music. What else is really needed? Off you go.